What's up, Thrashers? Welcome back to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and yes, oh yes, another episode of the Horsemen podcast, the penultimate episode for 2019. We got one more to go for this year after this, and that will be the top 10 albums of 2019, sometime in December, however. But that's then. This is now episode 24, I believe. We are tackling progressive metal for the first time on the show, but I'm not alone. I am joined by two of the regulars and a very special guest. We'll save the guest for last because it's going to be good. First of all, right next to me on this side, how you continue to scare me every single night in my sleep. Please welcome Artur Felipe Castana.
What's up, everyone?
Right above him, who usually, whenever we have 5 people in a call, he takes up the whole screen because he's an attention whore. Used to be the lagger, but now he's just there. Ricky Horror Master. What is up, Ricky?
What's up, everybody? Another day, another episode.
And last but certainly not least, a guest perhaps some of us, or not some of us, some people who have watched this show in the past have been waiting to see for a long time. He's on his retirement tour, so to speak, on YouTube. Please welcome good pal of mine, Mark, a.k.a. coverkillernation.
Hi. CKN Club for Life.
Too sweet, baby.
So sweet me, bro!
Yep, so we're glad to have you on board. So you are our third overall guest we've had on the show. We've had Kamikaze Games for a couple of episodes. For the Roadrunner episode, we had Mr. Scott Reacts, who's new to YouTube and all that stuff. And now we got you, and hopefully we can... What the...
What was that?
That sounded like a vibration on your
phone
desk.
just farted. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. But nonetheless, so before we get into the topic at hand, first of all, I do want to say this, and I have brought this up to you on Facebook in the past, but you are the reason why I do album reviews on my channel. Even if I don't do the best of job with describing everything, I do my best, and it's all thanks to you.
Thank you very much, man. You do great. You do a great job, man. Just keep it up, man.
Yeah, because I remembered when I first moved into this house in 2010, eventually got to have my own laptop or iPhone or whatever and went on the internet. About 2011, 2012 time, I discovered you thanks to you doing the Death discography, and I've been here ever since.
Wasn't a Ludwig Insanus like so many others.
Nope. Even though I did watch that.
I wasn't being a jackass.
But, and then the next question, because I always ask our guests this every single time, but for you, Mark, how did you get into the world of rock and metal and eventually progressive metal?
Well, it was a long journey. I ended up getting into alternative rock whenever I was in the 7th grade back in the late 90s, and it just seemed like the natural progression to get to things that are a little bit heavier. And back in 99, they had a lot of channels on the higher end of digital cable television that had nothing but music. And one of them showed and played a Dream Theater song, and I loved them. I loved the song. So I went out and got Scenes from a Memory, and it just started a love for progressive music. It was a completely different take on heavy metal for me, and it's just such a huge and vast world that I love, and I've loved for more than 20 years now because of that.
Amazing. So as far as the rest of us, how we each got into the world of prog metal, for me, I got into prog music in general very late. Kind of like Mike from Opeth, who also got into it very late in his life. Of course, I've told my story. At first, you want to talk about unorthodox. Got into metal thanks to video games and WWE pay-per-view theme songs. Then, by the time mid-2000s came around, I got I was already into Metallica prior to this point, but I got even heavier into Avenged Sevenfold, who were a massive gateway for me. And then teenage years, I got into thrash, high school years, death metal, then into black metal, and among the other extreme metal styles. Then by the time I turned 19 or 20, I gave Opeth a shot finally after I'd heard this band so many times on like looking at like articles and stuff and like music lists on other websites. I thought, I hear so much about this band Opeth. Why not give it a try? And look at me now. I've sold my soul to Michael Ackerfeld. So, yeah. And Dan Swano, among many other prog musicians. So, this is going to be a fun topic. But, Ricky, how did you... Well, I should also mention, too, around the same time of getting into Opeth and also even Tool, I was already into Mastodon prior to Opeth and Tool. But then also, thanks to these bands, I got into prog rock, got more into Rush than I already was, got into King Crimson, Genesis, yes, Kansas, the classics. So, Ricky, how did you get into the world of prog metal?
Well, with prog metal, you mentioned earlier, started with progressive rock, bands like Genesis, Journey, Kansas. That was my introduction to prog metal. And then I discovered Rush. Rush is the gate band between that goes up to prog metal, and after that, to Dream Theater, Opeth, everything in the spectrum came to buy. And then after when Banger did the progressive metal records, Mastodon came to the picture, and Mastodon blew my mind. Especially, well, I'm not gonna say which album I have, but they become one of my favorite prog metal bands next to Dream Theater and Tool.
Alright, now, Artur, how you have your opinions. You've told me all about why you don't like Tool, and that prog was your least well-known, but in what about prog do you like? Least well-known, but in what about prog do you... And it was late again on the echo.
Sorry. In a way, to prog, mostly prog rock, mostly thanks to my father was and still is a huge Pink Floyd fan. He still loves the old Peter Gabriel incarnation of Genesis. But I never got into to prog rock. Then, when I was a senior in high school, one of my friends showed me a song called Black Rose Immortal by Opeth, and this was before I knew Opeth as I know today. I hated that song. I never thought that something that I would hear later on would become something that I would enjoy very much. And although I'm not a big fan of prog metal, probably is the least of the metal genres that I hear constantly, I'm not ashamed to say that I've seen Opeth live, I've seen Dream Theater live, I've seen all these other bands live, and they're very great bands to see live. I don't say that I hate completely prog metal, but it's not exactly the first genre that I go.
About like me. About like me when it comes to folk metal.
And what rekindled my appreciation for prog metal was first off Mastodon. When they released, I think it was Blood Mountain. When they released, and I got to see them live. That rekindled my passion for it. And even when I was in college, I had this guy, Francisco. He was a huge prog metal and prog rock fan. We would go from there to the station, from college to the station. We would discuss prog metal. We would discuss drums. We would discuss everything. And that kind of rekindled even more my passion for my appreciation for prog. And it stayed this way, although my knowledge might be a bit limited, so to say.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we gave our stories about how we like this music. Well, now it's time for the actual top 10. Well, honorable mentions for some of us first. I know, Mark, you told me you don't have any whenever we were messaging at the start before the call was set up. Well, you know what? I'll save mine for last. Ricky, any honorable mentions you got?
Well, I just have 3 honorable mentions. First off, Rush 2112. Like I said, Rush is probably one of the biggest progressive bands in the world, and this album legitimized what they created and influenced the majority of the progressive movement. Second album, Gojira, from Mars to Sirius, Cyrus. I don't
Serious.
say it that way.
Serious.
Sirius. My first introduction to Gojira, which blew my mind, and still one of my favorite Gojira records. And last but not least, the album that you, Levi, recommended to listen a long time ago, Crimson by Age of Sanity.
Damn you. Damn it.
Hey, before I knew you, I didn't know who was Dan Swano was. I didn't know who Age of Sanity was until you did the top. We did our long songs. You brought Age of Sanity, Crimson. That was a 40-minute song. I was like, I had to listen to this, and it was beautifully created, beautifully done. Everything about it is great.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
hey, Mark's got it right there. I have it
OG
too.
copy.
You might see it later in the episode.
You might.
that's it.
All right, Artur.
I have 4 honorable. Although my list is going to have some bands that, at first glance, you may think that they're not prog metal, but after a couple of listens, you'll know. My first honorable mention is the same band that I said I dislike it with a passion, but I can respect what I did. Latralis by Tool. They can be put in the industrial metal genre, the prog metal genre, and you can say that before Fury and Inoculum, Latralis was one of those albums. This one may shock a bit some people, but it can be a bit prog. Borknagar's Urt. I mean, Borknagar may be one of those bands that at first glance you notice the atmospherics, but you don't notice a bit the progressive. After a couple of listens, you will notice. So, Borknagar's Urt, and in a way, a band that I got to listen thanks to our host, to Levi, The Spectral Sorrows by Edge of Sanity. And also to finish up, I have the Spectre Within by Fate's Warning.
Ooh. All right, well, I got a long list of honorable mentions. I got almost 10. Well, on my
What an overachiever.
yeah, when you're talking about some of my favorites, I gotta go really into it. Even though I got 8 on my picture I took here to remind myself so that way I didn't have to keep going to my WordPad and ruin the video. Right here on my list, I got, first of all, Black Crown Initiate, Wreckage of Stars. Probably the newest album on my list overall. I love they're like the Mastodon of death metal. Like, they remind me of what Mastodon would be like if they played death metal. Especially because their guitarist, Andy, does like almost like Braun Daler-esque clean vocals. And I love that. Great songs like The Malignant being probably my favorite. Or no, Great Mistake was probably the best one for me. Next up, Nocturnus the Key. Prog death metal insanity. Occult meets sci-fi themed, especially with that album cover. Ooh. And it came out during the old Florida death metal gold rush 1990, so you figured it was going to be something special. Fate's Warning, No Exit. First album with Ray Alder on vocals. And particularly thanks to the singles they put out, Anarchy Divine and Silent Christ, but of course, The Ivory Gate of Dreams, which took up half of the album at over 21 minutes. It's a masterpiece. And it had some of that thrash influence, which I love me some thrash influence in my prog at times. Speaking of thrash influence in prog, Coroner, No More Color. I mean,
I forgot about Coroner.
I mean, I've been getting really heavily into Coroner after I watched their documentary, which at the same time you could have mistaken it for a Celtic Frost documentary, considering Tom and Martin were in there quite a bit. But nonetheless, yeah, No More Color. Even though it was produced in Europe, it was mixed at More Sound. And yeah, great songs like Die in My Hand, Read My Scars, probably my favorite song Coroner's ever done. And that album cover of just the dude like this in like a weird, like, filtered before filters were a thing on your camera phones.
Warner did an amazing cover of the Beatles' I Want You, She's So Heavy as well that I cannot recommend enough to people. It's incredible.
Yes.
Beatle fan or not, you'll love this version.
Next up, Gojira From Mars to Sirius. Pretty much, Ricky took that right out of my mouth. Meshuggah, Destroy, Erase, Improve. As much as I hate how people think djent's a genre when I think it's just a guitar tone, you can't deny Meshuggah. They are great, even if I'm not the biggest fan of Meshuggah. This album totally kicks ass. You know, Terminal Illusions, probably my favorite song by them. Next up, Mark brought up this band on Facebook. I completely forgot about them until you brought them up. Too late for me to put them on the list, but I'll put it as honorable mention. Porcupine Tree, Fear of a Blank Planet.
Oh, no, forgot Porcupine Tree. Oh, fuck.
Very good.
I mean, I like what Steven Wilson does, even though I'm not as familiar with Steven Wilson's material. I do love and appreciate what he does, especially production-wise for one of our mutual favorites that we'll get into later on. I guess since Rush was brought up, I didn't want to put Rush on the list because I consider them more prog rock, but you could make the argument they are prog metal because 70s material like Fly By Night, 2112, you could argue pretty heavy stuff for the mid-70s, even if most people don't call it metal nowadays. So I guess I'll put 2112 in my honorable mentions as well, because why not? Next up, Voivod Dimension Hatros. Again, love my thrash and prog combined. And songs like Brain Scan, there was a couple others I can't remember off the top of my head for some. Psychic Vacuum. And there's another one I loved on there too that I can't name the song off the top of my head because it's been a while, but yeah. And then my last honorable mention, I have the album right here. It was number 2 on my Album of the Year list in 2016, Borknagar Winter Thrice. Got into these guys thanks to this album. I miss Wintersorg so much, even though the new album's amazing. I love Wintersorg's style of clean vocals. Reminds me of someone like a James Hetfield. But yeah, Winter Thrice. And this was a special version I got because I don't know if I can reach it right now, but it came with a patch for the band that I hope when I get a denim vest, I'll get it sewn on and I can start looking like a proper metal guy on the show instead of feeling like I'm left out. So that's the honorable mentions out of the way. God, that was forever on my part. I'm sorry, but it's just how I roll. Now time for...
It's a prog metal episode.
Yeah, there you go. If it's not long, I don't know what is. Well, post-metal maybe, and maybe folk, but that's what's up. Now it's time. Now it's time for the actual top 10, and I shall begin. My number 10, I thought about putting this higher on the list, but I decided to put it here because some people may debate, is it a prog metal album, or is it just a death metal album? Or, if you ask me, it's a combination of the two, and that is Death Symbolic. Love this album so much. I love Death as a whole, even going as far back to Scream Bloody Gore up to Sound of Perseverance, but for me, this was, in my opinion, their crowning achievement. 1995, you got fucking Mean Gene Hoglan on drums.
There's a choice out of left field.
It's on my list. I'll tell you that.
I mean, when you got songs like the title track, Zero Tolerance, Crystal Mountain especially, and probably the most, other than Voice of the Soul, perhaps the most beautiful musical part of a Death song, the final 2 minutes of Perennial Quest.
Is it Human that has Cosmic Sea?
Cosmic Sea
Human.
was on.
Closes it.
So yeah, there you go. But yeah, Symbolic by Death, their only album on Roadrunner, and I talked about on the Roadrunner episode why they eventually left Roadrunner, but And in case for those of you who want to know the full story, watch the Death documentary that came out a couple of years ago. Very interesting story there, and yeah. But yeah, number 10, Death Symbolic. Mark.
Number 10 has gone through 2 revisions in the past 5 minutes because I was very indecisive. So I'm actually just going to make it a tie. I'm going to start with what I've decided upon, which is The Sham by Arturus, which is just an incredible album. It's one that really took the idea of avant-garde and progressive music and took it to a space level. You have ICS Vortex. You also have Garm from Ulver. Just a lot of great personnel. Incredible band. They have never been able to top it. They tried with Slideshow Symphonies and failed. They tried with Arcturian after 10 years and failed. This is Arcturus at their best. The other 2 were Ulver's William Blake's Themes from the Marriage Between Heaven and Hell. Another Garm project. This is based off of the book by William Blake, and it's an incredible book, an incredible story, and the way in which they put this double disc together is phenomenal. One would argue that it has a little bit more of a, like maybe industrial or even a more avant-garde atmospheric feel. It's just a really interesting album. It really got me headlong into Ulver, and they have been one of my favorite bands ever since. And finally, I'm going to go with one that just was released last year, in fact. It was number 2, I believe, on my Album of the Year list, number 1 on a lot of my fans' lists, which is The Room by Ostra. This is a concept album that was just released in 2018 by a largely unknown band. They need to be known. If you're watching this video, you need to listen to Ostra tomorrow. That's Ostura, for those of you who need it. Just phenomenal prog metal that has tons of emotion behind it. Darker Shade of Black on this album is one of the best songs that I heard in 2018. I repeated it like hell throughout the first part of this year, and it continues to be a very sentimental favorite 12 months later.
Awesome. Ricky.
My number 10, and I had a hard time choosing which album to choose. But I went with the album that got me into the band, and that is Mastodon's Leviathan. Personally, better than Crack the Sky, in my humble opinion. But I just love the idea, like it's a Leviathan and the whole. I don't know if it's Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Leviathan. I don't know.
Moby Dick.
Mythology is that. Moby Dick, yeah, I love that whole.
Yeah, before Ahab.
I love that whole story of it. How about the big whale and all that? And I don't know, it's just a great album to listen to, especially during this time of the year. Kind of when it's getting colder and you want something like give you a bit of a rush. It's a great album to listen to.
And not to mention, Blood and Thunder, probably one of the best metal songs of the 2000s.
Yes, Blood and Thunder.
All right, Artur.
I think I'll start with my probably one of the most recent bands that I got, but eventually it became one of the best. From Australia, Neobliviscaris Citadel. I saw them live in Vagos some years ago, and they were great. I mean, I never thought that the band that had at least 7 members would be, in a way, progressive, but that's a whole different story. But then, when I heard Citadel for the first time, and I could hear all of these progressive sounds, especially with 2 vocals and combining even a violin as well, it made for an impressive beauty that I haven't heard since. I haven't heard in a prog metal in a very long time, and when I got to see them live, it was great. And even it's just 3 songs, but it's all comprised of all these. I mean, the longest song, which is Painters of Tempest, is 23 minutes. I mean, if that isn't prog, what else is? In a way. But my number 10, Neobliviscaris Citadel.
All right, and while we're at it with you, Artel, let's start with you. Well, actually, real quick, I completely forgot. So, Hannah Klein and Raphael Fireblade couldn't make it to this episode today, so they wanted me to read what their lists were. Real quick, Hannah had 3 honorable mentions. She had Mastodon, Crack the Sky, Orphanland, Mabul, and Sow Lotus, which might appear on my top 10 album of the year list next month, maybe. And her number 10 was Enslaved Below the Lights.
It's not the album I would have chose, but damn! Honorable mention.
Yeah.
Right now. Enslaved. Incredible album.
And then...
God damn it.
And then... Well then. What the... I think your phone farted again.
Dude, it farted again. Why? What do you want, phone? I don't care.
Raphael's number 10 was probably an album some of us might have, maybe not. Dream Theater, Images and Words at his number 10. Well, now back to Artur. Let's start with you on number 9. 9.
In a way, Hannah had that band on their honorable mentions list, Enslaved. But I did not choose. It did not choose Below the Lights. And I was kind of going back and forth on what I would choose, either Vertebrae or Retier. I think it's called Retier.
Yeah,
Retier.
But I think I went with Retier. I mean, to think that there once was Enslaved, who was as pagan as they could be, especially in their first 3 albums. Victor, Frost, and Eld, and then going on a very progressive way just shows how much diverse Enslaved are, and especially they've become one of the best bands in this genre over these past few years. And Retier is an expression of it. I mean, songs like Velburn, Roots of the Mountain, even Death in the Eyes of Dawn are, as I said, great examples. So, number 9, Retier by Enslaved.
and I'll mention this too. Enslaved, if I had them on my honorable mentions or anywhere, the album I would have went with would be End Times. That was the first Enslaved album I got, and wow, you want to talk about a journey. But with Enslaved, I agree with... if for Ricky and Artur and I, who remember the Banger TV Lockhorns when they did the top 10 albums of 2015, how the BraveWords.com guy said that Enslaved should be kind of like what Opeth was during the mid-2000s when they got to be on Gigantor with Megadeth. Like, some big band should take Enslaved out and expose them to a bigger crowd and get more fans. I totally agree with that, because they're at that point in their careers where, you know what? Perhaps a big band like a Judas Priest or Metallica should take them on the road with them for a tour and see how it goes. And they might get a bigger audience in their next tour as a result. It certainly worked for Opeth after being on Gigantor in, 2006, I believe?
Yeah. Second version of Gigantor.
Yeah, the second
The first
Gigantor.
one was Dream Theater.
Yeah. So, yeah, nonetheless, that's with Enslaved. My number 9... And again, Mark and I talked about this album very briefly on Facebook. Cynic Focus. And what in the world just happened? What just happened to the call?
There's a
It's just
gingerbread man, an anime thingy, and I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
No.
that's the rest of the game. That's,
But-
I guess, the call.
Is that like a
went to the
vampire
back.
bottle of Jack? What the fuck?
But that was weird.
Yeah, that was
It was
weird.
very-
It'll sell itself out, but luckily, I don't edit things like this because it's fun to keep it genuine.
Yeah, that's funny.
But anyway, so number 9, Cynic Focus. I mean, it's a short album in terms of length, but man, these guys knew how to play their instruments well. Paul, Sean, and actually both Sean Malone and Sean Reiner and Paul Masvidal. I mean, top to bottom, not a single wasted moment. And there you go, you got it right there. I mean, when you have songs like when you have songs like Veil of Maya, The Eagle Nature, my personal favorite, Euroboric Forms, arguably the heaviest song on the album. And even though back then they did a vocoder, I believe they call it back then, kind of like the precursor to iTuning. Wow, auto-tuning. It was cool for the time. Nowadays, you can't get away with it without getting people pissed at you. So they were able to get away with it, but it sounded cool. And as somebody in that same Lockhorns you brought up, Ricky, described it as death metal for aliens. And then, I mean, the album cover, I agree, it looks like an alien vagina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kind of.
But yeah, the whole jazz fusion mixed with death metal with a prog songwriting sensibility to it. I mean, what else could be said? And this album, as well as other bands like Atheist, Death, and even Nocturnus to some extent, would help inspire a whole generation of what would eventually become tech death with Necrophagist, Obscura, Gorguts, among so many others that came on the heels of albums like this. So yeah, number 9, Cynic Focus. Ricky, your number 9.
My número 9 is one of those albums that I said needs to be a bit more love to the community, and that is Fate's Warning, Awaking the Guardian. One of my, like I said, Fate's Warning is one of those underrated bands that deserves more respect. Again, very progressive bands, and my favorite song had to be The Sorceress. That's the name of the song, Sorceress, if I remember. Yeah, I think it's The Sorceress. Wow, I was like mind blown when I first heard it when they brought it up in the last episode in the Metal Blade Records with Banger TV. That unfortunately that didn't record.
Well, it's on their Facebook in 2 parts, but it was with a camera off to the side.
Yeah, and that was my first introduction to Fate's Warning, and I highly recommend you to listen to this album.
And real quick, just a little note, I want to bring this up because I have not brought this up on any other episode. But now that you brought up that Metal Blade episode, I'll never forgive you, Sam Dunn, for reading my comment about about Flotsam and Jetsam, Doomsday for Deceiver, and then you read another comment thinking it was me and you thought I called you guys bitches. I did not. You read another comment from someone else after me.
Just like I will never forget Sam Dunn and all the Banger TV crew for when they did the death metal episode, putting Sepultura in there and not putting freaking Bull Thrower on it.
We all have our little peeves, I guess.
While we're calling people out, Banger TV, y'all like contacted me last year to collab, and that never happened. You're out of time, pal.
Oh,
you're out of time. Get at me, dude. Get at me, dude. My number 9. I'm just going to jump right in, man. Shadow Gallery with Room 5 or Room V. Shadow Gallery is a really underappreciated band. They started in the early 1990s and just finished up during the early parts of the 2000s. Unfortunately, their lead singer did pass away, and this is their penultimate album. It was actually a continuation of an album of theirs from earlier in their career. Again, one thing that makes a great prog record for me, whether it's metal or rock, is the amount of emotion that it's able to convey and the influence that it feels like it could potentially have. And this is one that it really ticks off both of those boxes and then some. And plus, as another concept record, it shows that this band had the ability to tell a cohesive story, both through lyricism, but also through sound. That's not an easy thing to do. It's a terrific album. It's from 2005, so it's about 15 years old at this point, so check it out.
All right, did I get everybody's number 9? I believe 9.
So. No? Okay.
All right, so now we move on to number 8. Mark, how about you begin?
Wait, you forgot Hannah and Raphael's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is going to be tough for me to...
Well,
okay.
to be honest.
So, Raphael's number 9 He picked Opeth, but not the album many of us would think. He went with Orchid. Interesting. And I do love me some Orchid in my life, particularly Forest of October, because, good lord, I love that song. And then Hannah's number 9 was Arcturus, La Masquerade Infernale.
La Masquerade Infernale. Prior, it's Sham Mirrors before Sham Mirrors. Great album.
Alright, so now on to number 8. I'll real quick read their number 8 so that way I don't forget, because I don't have the best brain. I just love burying myself. What can I say? It's worked out for me in like Cards Against Humanity. Raphael's number 8 was Gojira The Link. Interesting. And Hannah went with a band that I would think Mark might have on his list. Arion Into the Electric Castle.
Oh. Whoa, that's an oversight.
It's on my list.
Ooh.
Not on mine. I completely forgot.
I completely forgot about Arion myself.
I remembered them, but then I just never threw them on there. So, quick honorable mention.
So now you have 2, and you thought you weren't going to have any.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now now to your number 8. So we'll start off with you for number 8.
I'm going way old school with this, which makes me appreciate the Fates Warning pick, but we're going to go with Operation Mindcrime, number 1 by Queensryche. Again, a tremendous story album, absolutely incredible disc, just
CKN,
wonderful.
it's my number 7.
That's my number 8
7?
too. It was my number 8 too. You stole the words right out of my mouth.
It's my number 1.
Oh,
Number 1?
Oh shit! First time Mark's on here, and he already commits murder.
Big brain plays boys.
Damn you!
Oh my god!
Yes. Jeff Tate might suck now, but he didn't then.
Yeah.
He doesn't suck now. I mean, it's just, some things happened during the first part of this decade that really showed him in a really negative light. But the dude's a hell of a singer, and Queensryche at this point in their career were a hell of a band. You could easily interchange Mindcrime 1 with Empire, and you would be just as intelligent and just as big brain. But it's unfortunate that Mindcrime got a really, really lackluster follow-up with Mindcrime 2, which came out in the middle 2000s. But you just can't go wrong with this album. This is the original story album. This is the original concept. Everyone goes back as far as The Who, but for prog, this is the original that confounded people because we don't know how it ends, and we never will.
Yeah.
Damn you!
Well, since that was also my number 8, I mean, you pretty much took the words right out of my mouth on that one. I mean, when you have songs...
I'm the Sublime Master Thief.
I mean, when you got songs on this album like Revolution Calling and particularly Eyes of a Stranger, one of my favorite Queensryche songs of all time, I'll be honest, when it comes to prog metal, Queensryche's one of the lower end bands for me. I do respect what they have done. I just wasn't as big of a Queensryche fan as a lot of others were, but totally appreciate what they do. And, of course, whenever you're talking prog metal and you leave this album out, that's like leaving...
Master of Puppets on
that's like
metal.
leaving Master of Puppets out of a thrash metal conversation. You just can't do it. Well, Ride the Lightning you could substitute, but that's a whole nother story for another time. But nonetheless,
Master of Puppets changed my mind.
Nonetheless, Operation Mindcrime is essential. It's essential to the genre, and it's kind of that along with what Fates Warning did with Awaken the Guardian and another album that I'll mention later kind of helped push the whole... Huh?
The Spectre Within?
But,
the Spectre
and then...
Within?
Yeah. But another band and another album that I'll talk about later kind of helped put the whole genre into full swing going into the 90s. Even if a lot of people like to think metal in the 90s was bad, you're wrong. So wrong. Anyways, that's a whole nother tangent. Oh boy, Artur, you're number 8.
A bit of a math problem for all of you. Russell Allen plus Michael Romero equals
Symphony X.
Symphony X.
Nick.
My number 8 is Symphony X. I mean, if you want a band that also combines great heavy metal and also a great prog, it's Symphony X. Even though you can call it a bit on the power metal genre, as some people I've heard, or symphonic as well, but
Neoclassical.
Exactly. I would say that to me, their most progressive album, then opinions may diverse, is 2007's Paradise Lost. I mean, taking a bit the John Milton poem of Paradise Lost and creating a whole concept album out of it, it's great. And no matter what you say about Symphony X, I mean, Russell Allen is still a great vocal. Michael Romero, a phenomenal multi instrumentalist, and it's with songs it's with songs like "Set the World on Fire," the self-titled Paradise Lost, Walls of Babylon, and even The Sacrifice, that make this, to me, arguably one of the best prog metal albums that I've ever heard. So, my number 8 is Paradise Lost by Symphony X.
And Ricky.
My number 8 again is another underrated album that deserves a bit more love, and this might be a bit shocker, and that is
Wait, I forgot number 8. There we go. I had to get that in. I almost forgot about it. Woo! That took a lot out of me. Ow.
Impressive.
All right,
Personally,
now
I'd
you.
give it a 9.
well,
Oh, thank you. Well, go ahead, Ricky.
my number 8, Sabotage by Black Sabbath.
We went deep.
If we're talking about the originators of heavy metal, Black Sabbath invented everything from the original Doom. And in this album, their most progressive album, especially with the song Something of the Universe.
Arguably the first thrash song, too.
Yes, and also you have Hole in the Sky, you have The Ride, you have Superstar. This is one of those albums that gets a lot of shit because this is during the time that they had some trouble with Warner Brothers and they had to do that album for legal reasons, especially that awful album cover, one of the worst album covers I've seen. But I like the whole album for the music. The album can go fuck itself. Yeah.
Wow. I'm surprised you went that deep into it. That's impressive.
I told you I was gonna have one of those left field records.
That was by far the most left field of them all so far. But I would perhaps agree. I would also maybe argue if you were to put another Sabbath album on there that you could argue being very proggy, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
Yeah.
You could make the argument for it, too.
You can make the argument for that.
But
You
while
said
we're
it's
on...
Sabotage. I thought you meant Sabotage the band.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But nonetheless, real quick before... Yeah, before we get back to you, Ricky, for number 7. So, for number 7 for Hannah and Raphael went with a strange Queensryche choice, Promised Land. I would have assumed that was gonna be received that way, because, yeah.
I
Okay.
respect it, though.
Respect?
Well, yeah. I mean, respect that he went with something that wasn't very obvious.
Exactly.
And then for Hannah, she had a tie at number 7. She had Ishan Arctus and Leprous Malina. After all, Hannah's a huge fan of black metal, and she loves some black metal in her prog, it seems. So, and I do like Arctus. Arctus was a great album, even though when I did the top 10 list, I completely forgot to mention that in the top 5. I was like, oh my, that's stupid. So I had to re-edit it and put it in the description that it was like number 4 or something. But yeah. Interesting tie right there, and fitting considering live, Leprous is Ishan's backing band. Or at least was at a point.
Sorry to interrupt, but they are now announcing the lineup for Hellfest.
Sweet.
Sweet.
So now back on track. Ricky, your number 7.
Okay, for this one, I have to do it properly. Let's see if I can do it.
Uh-oh.
To the hall of the Mountain King.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah!
There we go.
Sabotage.
Yes, I had to go. I had to go with it.
Oh shit! People are gonna see my bad hair. Suck me.
Oh, come on.
I
Look at
committed
this up here.
murder.
Look at that.
How could I forget?
There's nothing up there. It's gone. Someone stole it.
Although if I would put sabotage, I would not put all of the Mountain King. I would have put the Sirens.
That was my second choice, to be honest. That would have been my second choice.
Okay.
But Hall of the Mountain King, you can say the same thing with Black Sabbath Sabotage and Rush 2112, the pioneers of what would become progressive metal. And I just love that record to let, especially Stonewing. Stonewing is probably my second favorite Sabotage song. Very underrated song. But I'm sorry, Levi. I'm sorry. I just had to do it. If I wouldn't put it Sabotage, I would have kicked myself in the ass.
Well, Ricky, you mean
Yeah.
this?
Yes, I mean that.
This is my number 5. Damn it!
Oh man,
Everyone's committing murder on this episode. No one is safe. Wow. All right. So, Artur, you're number 7. Well, we know you're number 7, but go into detail.
I don't need to say anything else. I mean, everything has been said by you and by Mark as well. It's Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche.
Alrighty then. Damn you, Ricky. Alright,
Payback's a bitch, motherfucker.
Hey, thank you, Slayer. My number 7.
Diablo
The,
música.
No. You are not doing this to me again. And Mark hates that album too. So you got 2 people you're fucking with now. Oh my god, I'm dying of laughter and I'm sweating over here. Then again, it is pretty hot in here because I don't have my fans turned on. Otherwise, you guys would hear it over the mic. My number 7 is my favorite album from this band. The slip out case I have for it is fucked. I had to scotch tape it up because it started to fall apart on me. And that is da 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 Tool Lateralis.
That's my number 3.
Well, I got my payback somewhat. But yeah, I mean Lateralis, what can be said? Honestly, that hasn't been said before. I mean, hell, I got into this album thanks to fucking Guitar Hero. Because I was heavily into Guitar Hero back in the day. They had 3 songs on World Tour. 2 of them from this album, Schism and Parabola. But there are so many other good songs on here besides those 2. You got The Patient, probably one of my personal favorites. The title track, Ticks and Leeches, The Grudge. I mean, top to bottom. Yeah, it's quite long, but again, prog is all about long stuff.
Just a quick side note. The main headliners for Hellfest 2020, which is going to be a bit of a new metal festival. Deftones, headliner on the first day. Second, Fate No More. And third, System of a Down. These are only the headliners. I don't have to, I won't say all the bands here, but we'll have a discussion at other time.
Yeah. But yeah, my number 7, Lateralis by Tool, and yeah, there you see the tape. Because it started to like come apart, so the only way I could salvage that slip out, because I do like it, even though this looks pretty badass. But I like the little, like, sketches they do on the back of this. So, yeah. Lateralis by Tool, my number 7. Mark your number 7.
Well, first of all, 2 things. First of all, there's no Tool album on my list. just to trigger Tool fans.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Fans, I would honorable mention 10,000 Days, Lateralis, and Anima, all three of them. Second of all, Hannah, call me because number 7 is After by Isan. Didn't go with Arctis, went a little bit deeper. This was the album that solidified that I was going to love this man's solo work no matter what he did. And I was tested, we were tested with him with Del Saldenbrock a couple of years later, which was very different. But this album just showed that he can write it on his own. Adversary wasn't just a fluke. And the songs somehow are both black metal, progressive, and also catchy. You have a song such as Austere that is just beautiful and is able to do so much. But then you go to an album such as what Hannah mentioned with Arctis that has that same quality. So his albums just have a magic to them, and it's helping to really further what the new progressive metal is going to be all about, a very hybridized progressive metal. And he is one of the forerunners, in my opinion, one of the forefathers, maybe a couple other fours in there because fours are fun. And I love this album. Case in point. Someone else.
All right, so now we're at the number of the beast, the number 6. For Hannah and Raphael. Raphael had a number 6. Between the Buried and Me, Alaska. Interesting choice. And then for Hannah, she went with someone I forgot completely about, and I feel like a dipshit for it. Devin Townsend Project, Transcendence.
Forgot about Devin Townsend, too.
Yeah. There's just so much out there. It's hard for me to figure this out, but
So,
yeah.
Honorable mention.
I
Colors
can't.
by Between the Buried and Me. Number 6. We already talked about it. It's Crimson. It's Edge of Sanity. It's great. It's 40 minutes. It's one song. There's a sequel. You guys should really listen to both of them. Mike Ackerfield from Opeth is on there. Dan Swano's a genius. If you haven't listened to this yet, you're a moron. Listen to it now. Next.
My number 6 is, of course, probably the most popular band in the genre, Dream Theater, Images and Words. I mean,
Son of a bitch, that's my number 6.
So you and I got the same one. But I mean, of course, Pull Me Under, their most known song.
No. 666 here?
666 here?
Oh, number 2.
Along with another one that I'm going to mention.
But I mean, of course, everyone that's a metalhead knows, of course, Pull Me Under. But you also got Metropolis Part 1 on here. You got Under a Glass Moon, Take the Time.
I was going to say Under a Glass Moon and Another Day.
And this particular version I got has... okay, never mind. I thought I was reading something else. Never mind. I can definitely tell this was an early version because, like, it feels like very streaky on the plastic. I think I got this used at an FYE at one point. I can't quite remember where I got it from, but yeah, nonetheless, Images and Words by Dream Theater. Do I have to say anything else? I don't think I do. Oh, Ricky!
Well, number 6, Images and Words for Dream Theater. What more can I say? You basically said everything about it.
I thought about putting Awake instead because I love the songs Lie and 6 O'Clock so much, especially 6 O'Clock.
I almost put Metropolis 2. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, or for me, Octavarium would have been another good choice on my end.
Mm-hmm.
Did I? There it is.
Both Images and Words and Octavarium are my number 2.
Ooh. Damn. Alright. Alright, so now I completely lost my train of thought. Artur, you're number 6.
Train of thought.
In a way, someone has already mentioned Arion, and I was tempted to put Into the Electric Castle, but then I remember it wasn't Into the Electric Castle that pulled me towards Arion's side, so to say. It was 01011 and that whole 01 album from
Binary.
from 2008. And it was beautiful. I mean, it had some of my favorite vocalists of all time in Hansi Kirsch, Anneke van Giersbergen, Jonas Renske, and no matter what they say, he is a Ronnie James Dio lookalike, Jorn Landa, and he's one of the best there. Also with Michael Romero as well as an instrumentalist, but it is beautiful. I mean, the entirety of the story, the narrative that Arjen Lucassen creates, and it's 2 CDs. I mean, Why and Earth, and it's still so beautiful to listen. Even to this day, one of my favorite songs is a 10 minutes, almost 11, Age of Shadows. But it's very much beautiful to listen. I would recommend without a doubt. Arion's 01011 from 2008.
And real quick, speaking of Arion, Mark, I remembered when I watched your 2013 Album of the Year list and you brought up Arion, you brought up that you actually got to talk to Arjun a little bit about the album. Tell us that story real quick.
Actually, he saw the review of the album that came out and decided to message me. It was a really cool experience. I think one of my main criticisms of that album was the stop-start nature of it, because there was like 42 tracks. In my infinite, maturity, I've realized good choice actually on his part, as I retrospectively listened to that about a month ago and loved the flow. So obviously 6 years ago I was stupider, which is fair. But yeah, it was really cool to chat with Anthony a little bit, with Arjun, and get sort of some information about that disc. He's a real upfront, real easy to talk to guy. He takes criticism like a champ. Wonderful guy. Hey, if you're out there, Mr. J, or excuse me, Mr. L. Why did I become Harley Quinn there for a second? Mr. L, call me up, man. Let's do something.
And you know what that reminds me of? Just like that, earlier this year I got into like a similar conversation with Jeff from Possessed. After I did my review for the Possessed album, he commented and we had a good chat about a couple things, and he loved what I did. So we're both in the club of musicians watching our reviews.
Yeah, Zach Wild watched a couple of mine, but I'm pretty sure he was too drunk to remember.
Probably. So that was everybody's number 6. I believe we got everyone. I think we did.
All right.
So now we're into the second half, the top 5. Hannah and Raphael's list. Raphael at number 5 had Mastodon Crack the Sky. I am going to strangle him. I swear. And then...
This sounds like foreshadowing.
And you're going to murder me for sure.
And then, oh boy. And then Hannah's number 5 was Operation Mindcrime. But now it's time for everyone else's number 5. I'll go ahead since Ricky brought it up. And that is Sabotage in the Hall of the Mountain King. I bought this for a few bucks at my local Evans Variety, which is mostly a furniture store. But they had some albums. I bought this, and the title track alone should give this album some respect. But you also got White Witch, which I actually tried to sing at one point. I actually was singing at one point. And I was actually singing at one point, and my dad walked in on me and thought, what the hell are you doing?
Great thrash metal song as well. Sounds a bit...
Yeah. Beyond the Doors of the Dark, another classic. And then they even had a couple of great follow-up albums after this, and with great songs like Gutter Ballet, for example, was a great one. But I mean, Sabotage, rest in peace, Chris Oliva, John Oliva, still going out there kicking it, even in other projects. But This is where it all started. And honestly, without this band and without Nasty Savage, the death metal scene in Florida would not have existed, because these were the two that kind of kicked off the Florida metal scene as a whole. So there you go. Savatage and the Hall of the Mountain King. And I lost my ability to speak English for a moment. And I still use that one quote you used at one point, Mark, in Top 10 Douchebags list, where you go, if I could speak English, that'd be dangerous. I use that quote to this day because I tongue twist myself all the time.
Come up with why.
Yeah. Artur, you're number 5.
My number 5, it is a trilogy, so to say, because Mastodon, in a way, was the band that brought me back to prog metal. And even though I could put one album on this list, I could not, because those three made me want to hear. Even when I was returning from college with my friend Francisco, we were discussing Mastodon all the time. We were discussing Brian Daylor's insane drumming, Troy Sanders' great vocals as well, and I put the trilogy here. I've put Blood Mountain, I've put Crack the Sky, and I've put Leviathan on it. I mean, I could easily put here Remission as well, but these three, to me, were the albums that rekindled my passion for prog metal. And on Blood Mountain, there's my favorite Mastodon song of all time, which is not The Wolf is Loose, not Sleeping Giant. It's a very underrated song called Hunters of the Sky. So, my number 5 is basically the Mastodon trilogy: Blood Mountain, Leviathan, and Crack the Sky.
All right, Mark. Ah! The alien vagina returns.
You can never get rid of the alien vagina. Cynic Focus. We've already discussed it somewhat, but if you wanted to be complimentary about it and be a little different, scope out Atheist. It's the same vein where it's the jazz metal side. Death was starting to experiment with this as well, so you could toss on an album such as Human or even Individual Thought Patterns. This whole scene is very important to progressive music, considering it showed within death metal that there are no limits, which means that progressive music, which already showcased no limits, could go even further and invade these newer extreme styles and really give it something, somewhat of a boost, and make these styles more than just a very derivative or very, sort of monochromatic experience. You got it from this. You got it from bands such as Atheist, early Gorguts or God Gory, from Death. There were a lot of bands experimenting with this during the first part of the 90s. This is the most memorable. But, yeah.
I thought about putting Atheist Unquestionable Presence on my list at one point. Yeah. Ricky, you're number 5.
Oh, I'm about to commit a mass murder about now.
Oh, no! No!
My number 5 has 2 records. The first one, my second favorite. No, actually, no. My favorite Opeth record, My Arms, My Hers, because it has my favorite song, Demon of the Fall. And last but not least, oh yeah, you know what it is. The other Opeth, Blackwater Park.
Very, very good. Wonderful. You are doing the Lord's work, sir.
Yes. Mass murder.
Come out and play, my friend.
You mean this Blackwater Park?
Yes, I mean the great Blackwater Park. I told you I was gonna break somebody here tonight.
Don't mind me, I'm dying.
I mean, what more can I say about Blackwater Park that hasn't been said? I That's about it. I can't say anymore.
I do have, just like you, on my number 1, 2 Opeth albums, but one of them is for.
Yeah. I could have gone with Orchid as my second choice, but I announced my Hearse it's my favorite Opeth record, and Blackwater Park, regardless, some people say it's the greatest progressive record of all time. I had to put it here. It will be a blasphemy if I didn't put it here. And I broke the Levi.
I want to cry. Oh my lord, why? I guess this suits me right because I did the exact same thing in the folk metal episode when I brought up Primordial.
Yes, you did, and I did several times over. So,
well,
so this is what Artur feels like. Power feels great.
Okay then. Now we move on to number 4. Real quick.
Whoa.
Oh, did I forget? Artur?
Everyone is still missing. I was the first one with number 5. Wait, did we do number 5?
No, I was.
I didn't say my number 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Artur needs to do it.
No. I said. I'm sorry.
Okay, I thought I was.
You did.
All right, so moving on to number 4, Raphael and Hannah for.
You forget? Did you put your number 5?
Yeah, he said Cynic Focus.
Oh, okay.
So Raphael's number 4. He also went with Fate's Warning, No Exit, like I did. And then for Hannah, also Between the Buried and Me, but she went with Parallax 2 Future Sequence.
Okay.
Very interesting choice, nonetheless. Moving on, my number 4. My favorite musician of all time. I love this guy to death. Dan Swano, Moon Tower. Love this guy, what he's able to do. To me, I don't know if this is the right comparison or not, but like the Dave Grohl of progressive music and of death metal. And the reason I say that is because with Dave Grohl, he can play any instrument and can sing. Dan Swano, same thing. Play any instrument and sing. That's the comparison point. That's where it ends. But Moon Tower, after Edge of Sanity broke up in, 97? Decided to do his own solo project and pretty much did 98% of everything. Production, performance, album cover himself. I think the only thing he didn't do was maybe mastering. But nonetheless, I mean, if words can't describe this album, like top to bottom. And I love the way Dan Swano put it. He describes it as if Rush was playing death metal. Probably the best descriptor I could give as well for this album, because you got a lot of atmospheric keyboards, a lot of melodic guitars, Dan's signature growl, little bit of clean vocals, not as much as you would think, but because this is mostly a prog death metal experience. But when you got songs like Add Reality, Uncreation, Son of the Night, the opening track, it just leaves you speechless. And Dan Swano is one of the reasons why I have been trying to learn other instruments. Like, I'm particularly a drummer, but he's inspired me to try and learn bass, guitar, and sing. Thing is, I suck on guitar, I'm okay on bass, and I'm better at drums and can sing. Not to the best of my abilities, but I can. Mainly whenever I have my earphones in and I hear the song, I can sing. If not, you do not want to hear. Beside the point. Moon Tower by Dan Swano at number 4. Not to mention, label-wise, it was on Corthon from Bathory, his father's label, Black Mark Productions. I think Bathory and Edge of Sanity were like the two mainstays on that small label, which is kind of an interesting thing. I always wonder to myself, now that I just brought that up, I wonder if Corthon and Swano ever hung out together. I bet they probably did.
Maybe.
Without a doubt.
And I bet that would have been like you would be like fangirling at the side of that, because, a black metal genius and a extreme metal genius all together. But I don't know. I'm just going off topic. Anyways, before I go deeper into the rabbit hole, Mark, you're number 4.
My number 4 is a trilogy of death records.
Ooh.
The first one is Human. And then after that is Symbolic. And last but not least, The Sound of Perseverance. All of those. This is the most progressive death that's ever gone, especially with Human, with Cosmic Sea alone. Recognizable, probably one of my favorite instrumentals. Symbolic. I mean, Crystal Mountain, you have the title track. And The Sound of Perseverance, you have the instrumental, The Voice of the Veil. Probably one of my favorite instrumentals. You have the cover, Painkiller. You have shit. What am I blanking? What am I blanking right now?
Story to tell, scavenger.
Yes, story to tell. Yes, I was blanking right now. I don't know why. I love. This,
I didn't just listen to this
those
last
records.
night.
Yeah, I love those records to death. That they're almost as close as Scream Bloody Gore. Hell, I could even say that Sound of Perseverance is better than Scream Bloody Gore.
That was a good pun, Ricky. You brought up a good pun. You said you love those albums to death. Ha ha ha! Bad puns are the best. Oh my god, I'm such an idiot, but hey, whatever.
Die!
Oh god, I need to take a chill pill after this show. Artur, you're number 4.
Hey, you're right.
In a way, it has kind of been mentioned. It is a bit that borderline between prog rock and prog metal. Even it was a band that, I'll admit it, when it came out on Guitar Hero, me and my sister, we started to play. And great thing that they put on just the first part of it, Rush's 2112. I mean, I cannot say anymore. I mean, every single one of those guys, Geddy Lee, Alex Pearson, Neil Peart, are virtuoso type musicians. And even though you could say that Caress of Steel was a bit already in the prog rock, prog metal genre, I think that their apex was with 2112. And that story that they account on, that old 2112, and then they go with Passage to Bangkok, Twilight Zone. I mean, it's so beautiful, and as it comes out, as in terms of concept albums, it is still one of the best. I already mentioned Symphony X's Paradise Lost, being a part of that Milton 1666 Paradise Lost poem. Here, Rush they created a whole story on their own. So, my number 4 is 2112.
All right, Mark.
We have to do a perspective change here.
Put this back. Because this is apparently the number of multi-part or multi-entry whatevers, because mine is also a duo. It's a duality. It is these 2 albums right here.
Oh,
Model of the Well.
Model of the Well Path and Leaving Your Body Map, the companion albums that came out during the first part of the 2000s. Typically known more as an avant-garde band, this group was able to take their prog muscles and flex them even harder than ever. The names of the songs will confuse and baffle some folks, but I'm going to just give a few that are exceptional. We have, for example, Bizarre Flowers, A Violent Mist. We have Birth Pains of Astral Projection. We have Monstrously Low Tide. We have Gleam in Ranks, Stones of October's Sobbing, The Blue Ghost / Shedding Quillpith. This is a album that is more than just music, because inside these albums is also a complex series of symbols that a song that was released after this, entitled The Secret Song, was designed to guide you along to solve a complex puzzle. 18 years later, or however many years it has been, right around 18 years later, it remains unsolved. No one has solved it.
I'm going to make an announcement right here, right now. Toby, driver, I'm taking the challenge. I'm moved in now. I'm about to retire. I'm solving this son of a bitch in 2020.
Bold statement.
But yes, if you like avant-garde, seriously, I can't recommend these guys enough. You probably have already listened to these albums 10 times over if you're an avant-garde fan. If you're a prog fan and you're a little afraid to approach the weird and the bizarre side of avant-garde, this is a great way to ease yourself in because it's recognizable enough for you to feel comfortable, and the weirdness that it is able to bring in feels and makes perfect musical sense.
Wow. All right, so now it's time for the top three. For real quick, for Hannah and Raphael. Raphael had Meshuggah, Destroy, Erase, Improve. For Hannah, she also had Tool, Lateralis. But now, time for our...
Damn! That's my number 3 too.
Ah!
Lateralis.
Well, go ahead and talk.
Well, you basically said everything already, Levi, about Lateralis. My favorite Tool record, especially the title track, but also Parabola, and Schism. I mean, it probably is second to none. The closest that I can think of Lateralis is probably the new record, close around there. But it's a masterpiece of an album, one that I can say I can listen over and over again.
All right, Mark, your number. God, I can't roll my R's today. 3.
Tres. You numero tres.
My numero tres.
There we go.
Un, deux, trois, my numero trois. We have Fear of a Blank Planet by Porcupine Tree. This is a group that was kind of difficult to include here, but it's from the 2000s era, which makes it a little easier because their 90s era was more prog rock, krautrock infused, and even had some Pink Floydisms that Steven Wilson hates to death. So, Steven, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, buddy. I just say what people say, okay? I like The Sky Moves Sideways. It's probably number 1. It's amazing. Please don't kill me. But Fear of a Blank Planet is the culmination and the perfect medium between prog rock and prog metal. It, of course, has the massive epic, and this dies right there in the middle of it. But the whole entire disc just feels so complete. In Absentia was a great metal record, but at times it does feel like it has a little bit of an uneven pattern. Deadwing is emotional and tremendous, but Fear of a Blank Planet just has better overall songs. And The Incident was a great story, but it's better in a live setting than it is sitting and listening to it. So Fear of a Blank Planet is the epitome of what PT was able to do before they hung it up. And honorable mention, Hand Cannot Erase by Steven Wilson, because holy fucking shit, that just makes my chubby feel very, very pleasing. I had to throw PT on as opposed to Steve, because Steve was, a lot of this stuff is from not even this decade. I try to go a little old school, but you can't go wrong with anything Steven Wilson. If you need an introduction to Porcupine Tree, look me up. I will help you. I will guide you. So next.
All right, my number 3 is a duality, an appropriate duality.
Okay.
The album, or the band, I should say, has been brought up by pretty much everyone, except for me. The duality, probably in my opinion, the greatest duality of albums in the history of progressive music. Well, maybe not progressive music, progressive metal. Crimson 1 and 2. As I stated in the previous entry with Dan Swano, I just love everything he does. Witherscape, in fact, with their last album, was my number 1 for 2016. I can't wait to hear if they're going to put out something next year. And it'll probably be number 1 next year. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, Crimson and Crimson 2, like you kind of heard prior to Crimson, Edge of Sanity's starting to give teases of what they were about to become with Unorthodox and especially Spectral Sorrows. And then Purgatory Afterglow kind of was the building block to Crimson. Even though you could argue Purgatory Afterglow was a little more mellow death than prog death, because, you had more of that kind of, not so much like the Gothenburg side of things, but just the Swedish melodic death metal overtone to it. But Crimson was able to take that but write it in a more progressive way with a one-song album idea, which not many bands had really done up to this point. I mean, you heard, like, halves of them, like 2112, for example, being, like, one side being the whole story. But Crimson... I mean, when you have both Swano and Ackerfeld together, and especially probably the most beautiful moment on this album, the duet. The harmonizing, hypnotic duet that they pull before it gets really fast and thrashy at around the, I want to say the 32.5-minute mark of this album, from what I can remember. But, masterpiece of 1996. And then, of course... Yeah, and then, of course, Crimson 2, I mean, 7 years later. And this was a little bit longer, 3 minutes longer, and done differently, as you can see. I don't know if you could see it that well, but it's all in parts, unlike Crimson 1. Like, you got Forbidden Words, Incantation, I could go on in parts, but all part of one song. Kind of more or less... As opposed to it being more of a continuation of Crimson, at least story, it continues. Musically, it felt more like a continuation of Moon Tower, because you had a lot of keyboards on this album, but they were amazing. And at parts, it made me think, am I listening to Dream Theater with how the keyboards are done? It was that impressive. Of course, Dan didn't do the growls on this one. It was done by Raga Johansson from Rib Spreader, which was another Dan Swano project a little bit after this. But the clean vocals. Oh my god! Swano, I love you. If I was a homosexual, I'd want to marry you. But I'm straight. but
Hey, $20 is $20.
But nonetheless, I mean, what more can I say? Classics, probably the best duality, unlike Operation Mindcrime 2. Damn it. So, Crimson and Crimson 2 at my number 3. Artur, you're number 3.
I'm going once again to the duality again, and this is a band that, if you like thrash and prog at the same time, you cannot go wrong with this. And I've chosen to because Nevermore, spoiler, never. Warrell Dane, Jeff Loomis, Jim Shepard, Van Williams, gone. They left Sanctuary. They started Nevermore. They had amazing. Had Pat O'Brien. Only did, I think, 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
Dead Heart in a Dead World from the year 2000. I mean, it's a beautiful album. Starting off fast with narco-synthesis, but then going a bit to the more prog-ish side, the more melodic side, with Evolution 169, The River Dragon, Heart Collector, and even cover, in a way, Simon and Garfunkel in The Sound of Silence, before Disturbed made it popular, so to say. And even ending up with 2 great tracks like Believe in Nothing and the self-titled Dead Heart in the Dead World. But if one would think that this was the end of it, no. They still went 5 years later, although Enemies of Reality it is a great album. They went to This Godless Endeavor in 2005, and there we saw really what the proggish side of Nevermore really was. Final product, My Acid Words, This Godless Endeavor, the self-titled, they were some of the best. And if you like thrash with a little bit of prog, you cannot go wrong with Nevermore. Warrell Dane, R.I.P. I wish I could have seen Nevermore at least once. Warrell Dane, a great vocalist, R.I.P. Jeff Loomis, one of the best guitar players that ever lived, and still, although I think that in Arch Enemy is still a bit constricted by Michael Emmett, but that was his own choice. So, my number 3, Dead Heart in a Dead World, and This Godless Endeavor by Never.
Mark.
I already did my number 3.
Oh, you are.
Mhm.
I
Here
am
with
such
Blank Planet.
Oh, yeah, that's right. All right, it's top 2
Did-
time.
Wait, did they
It's
do?
2 time.
Did you do
Yeah, I
the
did.
threes for Raphael and Hannah?
Yes.
I believe I did. Yes, I did.
Okay,
All right.
very good.
So now on to number 2. If I can get my damn phone to come back. Raphael's number 2 was Undertow by Tool. And then for Hannah, it was Images and Words by Dream Theater. My number 2, on the other hand, probably the band that at first got me into prog metal, and I would listen to this album nonstop while I was playing WWE Crush Hour of all games. Crack the Sky by Mastodon. I love Mastodon. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. Closing in the top 10. Sometimes they'd be top 10, sometimes on the outside, depending on who else I'm into. But I mean, Oblivion alone, where you have 3 different vocal styles on one track. Braun with his higher register, Troy with his kind of mid-range, and then Brent. Some people may not get the comparison, but he kind of, at least vocally on this album, Brent Hines kind of reminded me of Ozzy Osbourne to some extent, because he kind of has that tone in his voice when clean singing. But yeah, Oblivion, probably my favorite song of all time by Mastodon. Divinations is great. The Czar, probably my favorite of their long tracks at over 10 minutes. Last Baron, the title track. Even the more underappreciated tracks like Quintessence and Ghost of Karelia. I probably butchered that. Sorry. Karelia. Even those were great. Like, there's not in my opinion, not a single missed opportunity on this album for me. And yeah, and then eventually they went on to be more mainstream darlings. But hey, and it's good mainstream music. Hunter, Once More Around the Sun, and Emperor of Sand. Curious to hear what they got in store next, because they're changing all the time, which is really cool. So that's why I love Mastodon so much. So number 2, Crack the Sky. Mark. I kind of saw that coming.
Metropolis 2 at number 2, Scenes of a Memory. Everyone loves Images and Words, I see. But that's the album that got me into prog. And it's the best Dream Theater album. Fight Me, Change My Mind. They took a one-song idea. They took a one-song idea, which was off of Images and Words, and they built an entire story and an entire mythos behind it. To the point where, somewhere on my computer over there, I was challenged on Facebook to make Metropolis 3 a storyline for it. And I did. And it's good, to the opinion of other people. I think it needs a little bit of work. But this is what launched Dream Theater into the stratosphere. They already knew, they already had attention because of Images and Words. But Scenes from a Memory gave Dream Theater the prospect of becoming the first big modern prog metal band. And they took that and ran with it, and it helps that the album is terrific. Whenever I look at this, the very first thing I look at is Strange Deja Vu, because that's the song. That was the song that I watched or heard all those years ago and got me into this genre of music. But The Spirit Carries On, for a long time, made me weep like a little baby, like a little bitch. And Finally Free is the song of Dream Theater's that I would most want to cover live if I were a vocalist of any sort of significance. It's an amazing album from top to bottom. It's one of the most perfect stories in prog metal. Ranks right up there with Operation Mindcrime, and I think it's untouchable.
Ricky.
I'm shocked nobody has mentioned this album, which kind of was like, I might be the only one to actually put it on the list. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
Damn it!
Honorable mention.
How can I forget that one?
My favorite Maiden album of all time.
I know Artur.
Mine too.
Yeah.
I don't consider that much
Cheers to that.
Seventh Son of a Seventh Son of prog metal album. First time I ever heard. First time I hear something like that. Although, not anything. I'm not saying anything against Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. It's one of my favorite Maiden albums of all time. But I don't consider that much a prog metal album.
I mean, yeah,
It's,
that's the argument, but it's a concept. The whole story, and I mean, you got the title track. Can I Play with Madness? Moonchild, The Evil That Men Do. I can go on and on and on. But I was like, do I actually put it on the list? Because I was debating. Because I was like, okay, it's Iron Maiden, not really progressive, but then again, Iron Maiden was influenced by prog bands like I think UFO and all that. I don't know.
Yes, Genesis.
Genesis. So I was like, okay, so it's kind of like a link. So I was like, fuck it, I put it. Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. What more can I say?
I thought about doing something like that with And Justice for All to an extent. I thought about it because I would consider that like their most progressive album for the long songs and how they wrote it, but I thought, set it to the side. Or even Rest in Peace, perhaps, to some degree, but yeah. Anyway, so Artur, you're number 2.
In a way, I don't know if it was Mark or Levi, but some of you already spoiled my number 2. Images and Words by Dream Theater and Octavarium. I mean, I could have easily put here Systematic Chaos. I mean, it's a very underrated album by Dream Theater. And I still love Forsaken and Constant Motion as well, but I cannot do a prog metal discussion without Images and Words. Dream Theater is beautifully amazing, very precise, very tech. I still remember once that they called John Petrucci the Terminator of prog metal because he's always looking at the guitar and he doesn't miss a note. I mean, the only sad part that I have, although not a complete downgrade, was when Dream Theater started to, after Systematic Chaos, when they put Mike Mangini in the drum set and not the founding member Mike Portnoy. It was a bit down. I was a bit down, but Mike McGinney is doing a great job. But Images and Words, I mean, Levi's already said, Pull Me Under, Another Day, Metropolis Part 1, and Under a Glass Moon, they're all-time classics. I decided to put Octavarium in here because when I used to play drums, I haven't played them in a long while. 2 songs that I tried to do and failed miserably on it was The Root of All Evil and Panic Attack. I mean, Panic Attack, I failed miserably on it. So, in a way, these are my 2 Dream Theater albums, Octavarium and Images and Words by Dream Theater. Number.
Well, Ricky, you, oh, how you, it's number 1 time and you committed mass murder early. I'll go ahead and begin. Of course, what else could it have been, honestly? I mean, Blackwater Park. I love Opeth to death. They're my 5th favorite band of all time. Or actually my 6th favorite band of all time, behind Death, Black Sabbath, Megadeth, Avenged Sevenfold, and Metallica. But there was a whole period from like late 2014 through to early 2016. I would listen to nothing but Opeth. Still go back to them from time to time when I'm in the mood for some Michael Ackerfeld clean vocals. Nowadays, when I listen to anything Michael Ackerfeld, I listen to more Bloodbath nowadays, particularly the early stuff. But regardless, Blackwater Park, it's a masterpiece. Arguably the greatest metal album of the millennium so far. You could make the case. The closest one that comes for Opeth to me would be Ghost Reveries. followed by a close third, Still Life, and then My Arms Are Hers. But Blackwater Park, I mean, as Mark has brought up, a good thing with prog albums, the emotion it can convey within you depending on the genre or the subgenre of which that they're drawing influence from. Whereas here, it's prog, it's death metal, there's some folky stuff, even a touch of jazz in some melodic parts. But I mean, just the darkness behind it. I mean, Bleak, Harvest, the pretty much the most melodic single off this album. Drapery Falls, Funeral Portrait, the title track. I I just can't put much further into words than that. Just listen to the album. You will thank us. You will thank us. And eventually, after you listen to this album, if you weren't an Opeth fan before, you will be now, and you'll love their discography, even if you don't like the fact they don't growl anymore. But hey, shame on you. You should appreciate everything they do, because Michael's a genius at vocals and songwriting. Fuck you all. Goodbye. Whew. Mark. As you're just speechless.
Arthur, is that your number one as well? Is it Blackwater Park? It is.
It is Blackwater Park as well, but I decided to put two once again. And Levi kind of spoiled it already. It's not Ghost Reveries, it's Still Life.
Is it this?
Still Life and
Is it
Blackwater
Still
Park
Life?
are, to me, the best albums that I've heard from Opeth. I couldn't have... Deliverance up for consideration as well. Ghost Reveries, Watersheds too. But Still Life, I mean, Still Life, it is still to this day an album that I listen constantly. With my friend, it was the album that when I was with my friend, I said to him that I did not like Orchid, nor Morning Rise, nor My Arms, Your Hers. Then he said to me, listen to Still Life. And I became hooked to Opeth ever since then. The More, Benighted, Face of Melinda. I mean, it is a ballad, but it has that jazzy prog, even doom part of the song. Serenity Painted Death, which is still a bit of a favorite of mine, but tops Face of Melinda, no question.
Moonlapse Vertigo.
Moonlapse Vertigo, yeah.
Like Cluster.
But and what's there to say about Blackwater Park? I don't think nothing else needs to be said. Although some of my favorite songs from there are both Harvest, The Drapery Falls, and the self-titled Blackwater Park. Bleak, not that much, but it's getting there, so to say. Sorry about it, but my number one, Still Life and Blackwater Park by Opeth.
And real quick, now that you had brought up Deliverance, that reminds me, probably my favorite part of any Opeth song. The final 2 minutes of A Fair Judgment, where it sounds so much like Black Sabbath and the slower Morbid Angel stuff. Like, wow.
Really
Doesn't get more doomier than that. Like, holy hell.
If you want sort of that death / thrash, check out the opening minute of Master's Apprentices.
Yeah.
All right, Mark.
It's Still Life. It's Still Life. And it's Still Life alone. Because I didn't want to do a tie, but now I do because I like Blackwater Park too. I like it a lot. It's nice. But Still Life is my favorite Opeth album. It's the album that didn't get me into the band. That was Blackwater Park. But it's the album that I can consistently pop on one song and find myself unable to move until it's complete. So you start off with The More, and you go all the way to White Cluster. You have to finish the whole album. It's a requirement. We are a Still Life household here. Me. But every song is absolutely amazing. And if you love Blackwater Park, this is the album that was the precursor to it. It showed you which direction that they were heading. Because while there are similarities between it and My Arms, Your Hearse, it's the formula that gave them the most success with Blackwater Park, that gave them the success with Deliverance. You know, they made tweaks to it. They extended it. They made it a little bit different. they added some other things by the time we got to Ghost Reveries. But Still Life was really, if you want a trilogy of Opeth albums, Still Life would be right in the middle of it. It would be My Arms, it would be Still Life, it would be Blackwater Park. But Still Life is the king.
Ricky.
Well, I guess I don't know if it was Mark or Levi that spoiled my number one. Operation Mindcrime.
It was me.
I mean,
It was him. It was him all along.
I mean, I love Jeff Tate in this record, even though over the years he kind of became a douche, but now he's coming back to reality. This concept record to me is probably one of my favorites. I Don't Believe in Love, probably my favorite song on the record. And what more can I say? It's a great on record. Operation Mindcrime 2? No.
And then finally, Raphael and Hannah's lists. Raphael had Rush 2112 at number 1. Hannah also had Blackwater Park at number 1. So, yeah, thanks a lot, Ricky. You committed genocide again. Well, no, this was your first major genocide. You pulled on me. You pulled on me.
Oh, man, it feels great.
Yeah, you did.
I still hold the record.
Yeah,
that is
I'm
true.
Second best. I'm second.
Anyways, though, so, hey,
So, boys, when we going to do rap? When we going to do the hippity hop? I like Post Malone. I like Lil Peep. I like Lil Uzi Vert.
Oh, shit. But anyway, so that pretty much does it for this episode. What a memorable episode this was. Wow. We got quite nerdy on this episode, and I love it. After all, it's Prague. It's bound to get that way. But anyways, thank everybody for just stopping by. Thank you, Cover Killer Nation, for stopping by on your retirement tour. It was an honor finally to have you on a video of mine. Even if it took many years to make it happen, we made it happen.
We're busy.
Yeah. But a couple of quick updates for viewers who had been watching the premiere stream or eventually the archive. Reminder, we got one episode left for this year, coming in a couple of weeks. The top 10 albums of 2019. After that, however, we're going to take about a month or so off to regroup, come up with new ideas for 2020, more top 10s, more debates, or whatever other ideas we might do to expand the Horsemen podcast. Maybe we get more guests. Maybe someday, if we're lucky, get some actual musicians on the show. Or one of the dreams we've tried to do since the day we started this podcast, get a member of Banger TV on, considering that's how some of us knew each other, thanks to Banger TV. Luckily, I am friends with Bradley Zorgdragger from Banger. Maybe I can get him one day if he ain't busy on tour or anything like that.
Hopefully.
But beside the point. So yeah, reminder, episode 25, top 10 albums of 2019. After that, about a month or so break. We'll be back in 2020, and we'll hopefully be better than ever. Hopefully, at some point in 2020, I get a better computer, a gaming computer, and we can do more live episodes in the future. And it not looking so damn choppy. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Ricky, Artur, for helping me through. Thank you, Mark, for being our guest, our third ever guest. And hopefully you find some cool things to do after YouTube retirement.
Yeah, I'll be working.
At least you are working. I need to find me a job. But anyways, that's a whole nother conundrum. Peace out, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Oh, God, I could really use some good quality entertainment, but all I got's $40. So, what the hell am I going to do? Okay, let's see what we got to drink. Ah, fucking perfect. Some good old Powerade. Delicious. No, not really. Damn it, we don't even have Spam in here! Why?